Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Heavenly Autumn Bridge, and I'm sipping on some pear tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, deep yellow, fluorescent orange, fire red, green oxide, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a few additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you could download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing for the first step is I'm going to be drawing an outline for my bridge and my landscape. I'm going to be using my pencil. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that you would like, but I'm going to opt for a pencil because it can be easily erased if I make a mistake and need to correct something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through a series of markers, and we're just going to connect those markers. We're not going for any complicated, detailed work right now. We're just trying to segregate or separate out certain sections of the painting or for the composition. So we're going to separate out our big bridge, and then we're going to separate the sky from the land. I'm going to do the bridge first. I'm going to have a lot of perspective on it, which means it's going to look really close towards the viewer at the bottom of the canvas, and it's going to look really far away as it goes towards the light. So I'm going to have it small up top and big down at the bottom. My first marker that I'm going to make is about 1/4 of the way down my canvas and in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself about the halfway mark up, on the left hand side, somewhere around here. Then I'm going to go about halfway between that and the top of my canvas. So that'll take me somewhere in this vicinity. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in about 3.5 to 4 inches, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a marker. So somewhere in through here. I'm also going to make another marker down in the bottom left-hand corner of my canvas, like that. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to come in about 1 inch, 1/2 inch to 1 inch, make myself another marker. I'm going to connect here to here and here to here, using a long kind of curving type of a line. So I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to just give myself this big curving line that's going to meet my bottom marker in through here. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this one over here. My thought process is this is the far away part of the bridge, and so it's going to be really narrow in through here. So you don't even really need to make it any wider than you already have your pencil mark. And then as you come down, you're going to start to separate this line from that line a little bit. So something like this. And right about here is where I'm going to start to curve it and bring it back towards the other one. So I'm going to curve it something like this. I'm curving it pretty far down, so you don't have to do a sudden curve. It's going to be a gradual curve to make it resemble that right hand side. And then I'm going to bring it down and meet it into this corner down in through here. Now what I'm going to do is, and you can see I'm using just a sketcherly line. It doesn't have to be a perfect line. We're going to be painting over it. This is just going to guide us through the way. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself back at the halfway point on my left hand side of my canvas. I'm going to come up about an inch, make myself another marker, and I'll do the same thing over on the right hand side. So if this is about halfway, I'm going to come up about an inch. This is just going to be the horizon line for my land. I'm going to just give it kind of a wavy type of a line to emulate maybe some hills or something behind my bridge or below my bridge. So I'm going to do that and then come kind of over to the left hand side at about the same height, somewhere in through here, and then just give yourself kind of a nice loose wavy line. And that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline. You can certainly adjust yours however you want. We're going to be using our large brush for the next step, so you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for the sky, the land, and the bridge. We're going to do all three of the base coats on this step. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are blue and white for my sky. I'm going to be using brown for my bridge, and I'm going to be using brown and green for my land. So I'm going to start with my sky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with mostly blue on my brush and just a little bit of white. So mostly blue with a little bit of white, and you don't need to scoop up the whole thing, just a little bit of both. I'm going to start up in the right hand corner of my sky, and I'm going to be applying my paint in a circular type of motion. What this is going to do is this is going to start my process of a really cloudy sky. So I know that I'm going to want to have lots of movement in my sky and a lot of different effects to happen. So this circular motion is going to help me to start that process. So now that I've kind of ran out of paint, I'm going to pick up white paint on my dirty brush, and I'm going to continue with that circular motion. And what now this is going to do is it's going to get my sky lighter and lighter as it's coming towards this left-hand side. You can even bring it right to that horizon line and paint over the horizon line so you're not missing any of the canvas. And you don't have to worry about this being perfect because we are going to be adding a lot more on top of it. I just keep reloading my dirty brush with white paint, and this is allowing me again to get it to go lighter and lighter as it comes over to this left-hand side. I do not want it to go all the way white because we are going to be having a bright light appearing here, so I want that white to be visible later, so I don't want this to go fully white. If yours is already white, just pick up a tiny bit more blue. As you're reaching your bridge in through here, you might find yourself wanting to slow down and maybe just kind of go right around the bridge like this. I'm touching my pencil, but I'm still getting all that area covered. And then I'm just going to kind of use my circular brush stroke to bring this out towards the rest of the area, making sure I have a nice good coverage. I'm running out of paint, so I had to reload with a little bit more paint, making sure I bring it all the way down to that horizon line. And then once I've got my sky covered, and again, I'm not concerned about it being perfect because we've got lots more to go on top of this. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start tackling my land. So washing and drying my brush, and what I'm going to do on my land is I'm going to do a different brush stroke. I'm going to be using a stippling or dotting technique. So I'm going to take my paint and I'm going to dab it into the canvas. I'm going to start with green and brown, about equal parts of both on my brush, and I'm going to start down at the bottom. I'm bringing it right to my bridge, and you can even kind of dot it right into the side of the bridge. I want left to right to kind of look similar in color variation. So when I have that green and brown on my brush, I'm going to bring it over to this right hand side. Now what I'm going to do without washing my brush is I'm just picking up green paint. So this will help me to have almost a gradient of sorts from the bottom of the area to the top of the area. And this is going to eventually be trees, so, or tree tops. So it's okay, again, if even if you're not blending it fully and you almost see sections of color at this point, that's all right, because we're going to be adding lots of information on top of it. So once I get almost to the top, I'm going to start adding a little bit of white and blue onto my brush. So it's going to make this landscape look like it's going farther and farther away. So on my dirty brush, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white and an itty bitty bit of blue. So just a teeny tiny bit on the end of my brush. So I still have green on my brush as well. So what this is going to do, again, it's going to make this landscape look like it's kind of going off into the distance. I'm bringing it all the way up to my pencil mark, even kind of just tapping onto my pencil mark so I can make it so my pencil will disappear. And again, don't worry about a perfect blend, just look to accomplish getting the full area covered. And just reloading my brush with a little bit more of my white and an itty bitty bit of blue on my brush, and then I'm just going to tap it in, making sure that I have this whole area covered. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash my brush one more time, and I'm going to tackle the bridge. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and my bridge is going to be with just brown paint as a base coat. So I washed and dried my brush, and I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke for here. So I loaded my brush with brown paint, and you can be pretty heavy with your paint on this step. You are running the risk of bumping into wet paint along your bridge and your sky, which is okay, because we have I have designed this painting to have clouds around the edges of your bridge. So even if you're too nervous about going right into and bumping into that landscape, go right near it. You can have a little visible gap between the land and the bridge. So don't feel like you have to make this perfect. I don't even want a perfect coat. So you can see I'm almost kind of scrubbing it in certain areas. So I have some dark spots and light spots. My thought process creating this bridge was that it was perhaps a wooden type of bridge, but if you want to think of yours as something else, you can certainly do that. I'm using a left to right brush stroke right now. When I get up top, the brush stroke is not going to be terribly important because it's going to be so far away that the details will get lost in the visual kind of storyline of it, because it's so far away. We're going to have mist or clouds and stuff on top of it. So as you get up into here, if you're losing that left to right detail on it, it's okay. Right when I go up top here, and plus I'm using a pretty big brush too. You could use a smaller brush, but when I go up in through here, I'm not terribly concerned about being able to see that left to right detail. I'm just more concerned about getting a color on there at this point. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our land. So this will be our treetops, our autumn treetops. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, red, yellow, white, orange, and if I have to, some green, but I may not have to. So I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry. Or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving the illusion of some autumn treetops. I like to incorporate green a lot of time in my autumn landscapes when I'm doing leaves and stuff, because to me, all leaves start out green before they turn their autumn colors. So I like to have that as kind of a base, or at least incorporated somehow. So that's why we started with green. And then I'm going to create some dimension on this with using bigger treetops down towards the bottom of my canvas and smaller treetops at the up towards the top. I'm going to be using my dotting or stippling type of technique When I put these treetops on, I'm going to be in my head thinking that they're kind of a curved type of shape at the top. So I'll be using, I'm going to start with some red so I can show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to be using almost like a curved type of shape for those treetops. I'll be doing large ones at the bottom where it's closest to the viewer, and then as I go towards the top of the canvas, I'm going to be doing smaller ones. So you might move your brush in a little bit different of a way. Maybe you just kind of dot in little tiny pieces as it's going farther and farther away. They might even just end up looking like little speckle marks as they go farther and farther away. All trees don't have to be round like this. You could do some dark green ones that are kind of pointy in nature, so they look more like pine trees if you wanted to, but you could really get away with kind of doing whatever type of shape that you want. But for me, I'm going for something that resembles just a basic type of tree top shape, and in my head it would have kind of a rounded little top to it. So I started with red. I will incorporate other colors in a minute, but I'm just going to kind of start with my red and work my way towards some other colors. If you're going about this, and I mentioned that I might use brown, because brown will act as a nice color to add some depth into these trees. So let's say I wanted to have an area that's a little bit darker, like at the bottom of this tree. I could always pick up my red plus a little bit of brown and add a little darker spot in between or down at the bottom of that tree to give it to make it look like it's kind of going down deeper into the forest. And we're just seeing the tree tops, so we don't have to really worry about making them perfect. So I'm going to now pick up some orange paint. So I washed my brush, which I wouldn't really have had to if I didn't have that brown on there, but I washed my brush and I'm going to start incorporating some orange trees. I am going to be doing a second layer on these trees in a minute, but this is just giving me kind of a base where I want them. And then once I've got enough on here, and you put little clusters, you don't have to put them all evenly spaced apart. You could even extend your horizon line a little bit if you wanted to. If you're really enjoying one of a particular color, you can certainly put more of that in any area if you want. And I like to just be sporadic. I don't want it to look too uniform, just really kind of giving some nice appearance there. So now I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to pick up some yellow, and again just kind of tapping in some yellow trees. You can overlap from one to the other. In my head I'm just kind of trying to give these kind of roundish tops, leaving some of the green showing in between, because again there's going to be some green trees, so you can certainly leave some green areas. And again, just picking up some more of my yellow, popping in some over here. And the yellow, my yellow is transparent, which means you can see through it. That is why you're being able to see some of the green through it right now. But in a minute, when I add my highlight, you're going to be able to see how much more vibrant I can get this yellow to look. But I'm just kind of popping in these little colors here and there. So that's looking pretty good to me. I'm going to wash and dry my brush one more time, and I'm going to start adding little highlights to these leaves. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to start back with my red ones. I could in some points just get away with using red as my highlight color to pop in some bright notes on top of these. But if you wanted to, you could also use red plus a tiny bit of white. You don't want to put too much white on there, and that'll give you the illusion of a little bit more sunshine on some of those, but it might turn a little bit too pink. You could also use a little bit of green with any of your colors. As you're going through the second pass, like I just picked up a tiny bit of green, and I think I'm going to go green and a little bit of yellow as well. You can add more color in between them with green and yellow, with green and brown, whatever kind of colors you want to add a second layer on top of these leaves is completely up to you. So I'm going to wash my brush because I want to start back with just the highlights on the reds, and I'll progress that way. But I wanted to show you a couple of little ideas as you're going through this final pass. So I just picked up a little bit more red, and I'm going to just kind of find my red ones. Maybe I put a tiny bit of red in one of my orange trees, so you don't just have to put it on the red ones. You can put it within other trees, because when I look at the autumn trees where I live, there's multiple colors in them. So don't feel like you only need to put red on the red trees or orange on the orange trees. You can certainly put multiple colors on each tree if you wanted to. That really gives a great diversity to it. I'm predominantly going red on red, but every now and again, maybe I'll pop a little red into the other ones. And then when I go to put the other colors, maybe I'll put some of that in my red trees. So that's pretty good. I know that I have a lot of red on my brush, so I just washed and dried it. I'm going to put some orange on my brush now, and then just start illuminating my orange trees. And you can see this is kind of I can see the top of it next to that red one. I'm really kind of laying on the paint pretty heavy at this point, so it allows me to get this vibrancy in the trees. You can certainly make yours as vibrant or as subtle as you want. I really dig this orange to get this nice vibrancy. I think I'm going to put a little bit of this orange in some of these red ones too, because I'm digging what it's doing. So we're just going to put it everywhere. But I'm being mindful to not overpaint, to not take away all that green behind there, because I know that that is important for me to feel like I have a natural looking autumn landscape. Now I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just wiping it off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a little bit of my yellow to finish out my yellow ones, and then I'll pop in a little bit of white at the finale of this, so I can get a little bit of a highlight, especially up towards the top. I think, yeah, I'm going to do that in just a second here. This is just a little bit more of the yellow, and I'm pretty heavy-handed with it right now, so I can have those bright spots. Now I'm picking up yellow plus a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush. So this is where I'm going to start to see these little pops of sunshine on some of these, or the bright light on some of these, and maybe just a little extra bits up towards the top as we're reaching the top of, or the area that's the closest to our light source off in the distance. And then I would let it dry, and if I felt that there was any areas that I wanted to fiddle with a little bit more, if I wanted them to be a little bit brighter or incorporate any more of these, vibrant tones to the leaves, I would certainly do that. But I'm thinking that this is pretty good for now. So we are going to be using, we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the bridge surface. I'm going to be using my large brush to paint, but I'm going to use my medium brush to mix a custom color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a lighter area in the center of the bridge platform, so it ends up looking like it's being illuminated by the light from above. I'm going to create myself a custom tan color, which I've magically done. I will show you how I got there. So this is the tan color that I'm going for. I'm also going to be using this as a base color for my clouds. So if you're pre-mixing a color like I did, just make sure that you make enough that you'll be able to use later for your clouds. How I got to this was I used quite a bit of white paint. I used a tiny touch of red, a tiny touch of yellow, maybe a little bit more than that. A little bit of yellow, a little bit of red. So red and yellow makes orange, but I didn't want to go with my fluorescent orange. So these make orange. I'm also going to be using brown. So white and brown is going to make tan, and then I'm adding a touch of orange into it so it's not too dull. It'll make it look a little bit more like a golden type of a tan as opposed to a drab tan. So I'm mixing these colors together. It appears I might have a little bit too much red in my equation, so I'm going to add a little bit more yellow and white to my equation. That'll make it bring it a little bit more vibrant and have a little more golden hue to it. Yeah, there we go. We're getting there. I just need to put a little bit more white in it. And then once you've got the tone that you're looking for, and yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine, I'm just going for a nice soothing color that will complement the rest of the painting and make it look like a nice light color to my wood tone to my bridge. So that's looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to put my medium brush away. I'm taking out my large brush and I'm going to take that custom tan color. I do not need a lot on my brush, just a little bit. I'm going to start up top. I'm going to put it up top first. I will eventually put a little bit of white up here as well, but right now I'm just starting with a little bit of my tan. So just going into the center of that bridge area, and then I'm going to pull it down just a little bit in through here and then start using that left to right brush stroke, just giving myself a little bit coming down the center. I don't want to cover up all of that brown that I had previously put on. So this is just allowing me to intermingle this light color. I will be getting it to blend on the edges with the brown as well, but right now just adding this in here. I want my bridge to look a little bit, I have a little bristle there, look a little bit darker as it comes down towards the bottom. So in a second I will be picking up more brown. So that's looking pretty good for a start. Now I'm going to pick up my brown on my dirty brush. So I didn't wash my brush. This is so I can get my lightness to kind of blend into the sides a little bit. Make sure I have a good coverage down at the bottom. So I'm just using the second coat of brown in order to make sure that I have it fully executed the way that I want it to be. So this means I wanted it to be darker down at the bottom, so I'm putting more brown down in through here. And then I don't just want it to look like I just painted the center and didn't pay attention to the sides, so I can pick up a little bit more brown and just make sure these edges intermingle with that center area. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here on the right hand side. So just back and forth, left to right, pulling it a little bit in towards that light area that we created in the center. And because paint tends to be transparent or translucent, and because I'm using such a firm bristle brush, it will leave a streakiness to it, which is why I'm paying attention to making sure that I have a second coat on here. That second coat is going to make it look nice and finished. And again, I'm not terribly concerned about these edges because I've got clouds coming in a minute, but this is going to allow me to get that ethereal kind of look down the center. I think I'm actually going to put a little bit more lightness in this middle area. So I just wiped my brush off, picking up some of my tan. Again, I feel like I want this to have a little bit more breadth and width to it. So just pulling out a little bit more of this light color towards the edges, towards the sides. That's looking pretty good. So it's narrow up here and got wider down in through here. And then I'm going to pick up a touch of white paint. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm putting a little bit of white paint up on the top edges or the top area of the bridge. So wipe my brush off, pick up a little bit of white paint on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to just kind of tap in some little white marks in this center area. So this will look like this area is closer to the light source. So I can just kind of go left to right with a little bit of this white, and then as I come down towards here, I'm going to just let it kind of dissipate. So that way it'll look like it's gradually going into this darker area. And then I would let it dry and see if there's anything more that I want to do with it. And we are going to be using both our medium and our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your medium and your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the first layer of the posts. I'm going to be using my medium and my small brush to do this because I'm going to have big posts here and I'm going to have itty bitty tiny teeny tiny ones as they're going far away, so I need a really small brush to do that. So I'm going to be using just black paint as my base coat here. We'll be adding some additional colors on the second layer to them, but this is just going to be the base coat. Put them in place and then we'll work on the fine-tuned details later. I am going to have them lining both sides of my bridge. Again, I'm not going for perfection here. I just want to have something that gives a nice rail system to this, or post system. So, you know, if somebody needs to hang on to something, they can. I'm going to have big ones down at the bottom, and then they'll be really small as they go up. The only trick to this is to keep them vertical. If you start to make them tipped to the side, it's going to look like they're falling over, or like we're going around like a roller coaster. So whatever you can do, try and keep them in a vertical position. I'm going to not care if one side is exactly the same as the other, but if you wanted to do that and measure them out, you could certainly do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my larger ones first with black paint on my medium brush. I'm going to have my first one in through here. It's going to be really tall, so I'm going to just kind of mark out how far or how wide I want it. They're going to be taller and wider, closer to the viewer, and shorter and skinnier as they get farther away. So this is about as wide as I have it. It's probably about an inch, and I'm going to bring it right onto my my bridge surface in through there, and then I'm going to have this one coming all the way up here. So I'm maybe about 2.5, 3 inches away from my horizon line, and then I'm just going to color this whole thing in with black. I'm, again, just going for a carefree kind of look here. If you need yours to be perfectly symmetrical and straight, you might want to get out a ruler or a pencil or something to aid you in doing that, but I'm okay with these just looking like wood posts that have been weathered a little bit and not perfectly straight. Again, my whole goal is to just kind of keep them vertical as opposed to tipping over. As I get into my smaller ones, I will most likely use a bit of water on my brush to thin out my paint a little bit so I can have more smooth lines. So this one I'm going to have coming about in through here, and then I'm going to have the base of it somewhere in through here. So it's a little bit more narrow than this one, and it's seemingly a little bit taller, but that's just because it's going up. My bridge is going in an upward direction, and then I'm just going to paint this in with my black paint. And again, you could certainly, I'm adding a tiny bit of liquid, well, I'm using water, but you could use any kind of liquid medium that you want. And then that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not concerned about the bottom because we're going to have clouds covering the bottom of these posts. My next one is going to be it's going to be a little bit higher than this one, right over in through here, and I'm just going to kind of come straight down. In a minute, I'm going to start not needing to even go wider than the bristles of my brush, because they're getting more slender as it's going farther and farther away. So right now I'm just kind of bringing it down in a vertical direction to my bridge itself. I'm going to do maybe 1 or 2 more on this side with this brush, then we'll go do the big ones on that side, and then we'll come back and do the small ones on this side too. So a little bit higher than this one, and it's going to look a little bit closer because it's getting farther away. So they'll look closer to one another, they'll look shorter, skinnier, so they take on a much different look the farther and farther away that they go. So this is going to be in through here, and this is probably the trickiest corner or the trickiest area, because if you're keeping them vertical, what's going to happen is one is going to hide behind the next as you go around this corner. So I'm going to switch to my small brush in a minute to finish up those ones, but you'll see what's going to happen as I go around that corner in a minute. So I'm going to go down here. Again, not concerned if it's exactly lined up with these ones, so I'm going to put my biggest one is going to be about this high, and I'm going to come down and make it about this wide down at the bottom. Again, my biggest thing is just trying to keep these posts vertical. So if you need to, you can kind of watch the edge of your canvas over and through here, or you could even kind of measure how far away you did the top to the bottom from the side of your canvas, and that'll tell you if you're remaining in a vertical or if you're starting to tip them at all. It doesn't, you know, it's not a huge big deal, but if you wanted to keep this type of perspective, then keeping them in a vertical way aid you in making, in providing that illusion a little bit better. So again, just bringing this straight down right to the base of my bridge, and I will in a few minutes change my brush so I can tackle those smaller ones. So this is going on right in through here, and because I'm using a little bit of water or thinning out my black paint a little bit, it's allowing me to get these more narrow type of marks with a bigger brush like this. And again, just keeping it in a vertical position. So I'm thinking maybe I'll get one or two more here, and then I will, I'm feeling like I should probably definitely start switching my brush here, but let me just get this last one. I think I can. There we go. So I'm going to switch my brush. So I'm switching to my small brush, and I've got my black paint on my brush. So I'm going to do this left-hand side first so you can see what's going to happen as I come around this corner. So if I'm just going to go up a little bit from, you know, where this posts end and go right about in through here, in a minute what's going to happen is the posts are just going to disappear if I keep in this vertical way. Like my next one would be hiding right behind it, but maybe I can see just the tippy top of it, something like that. And then as I snake my way to the left, it's going to start reappearing. So I can't see probably this one, maybe just a little bit in through there. These are just little tiny, they're hiding behind one another. Here we go. We're going to start to see them now. There we go. Now I'm going to just make sure that I keep on my vertical way, and then you can start to see them re-emerging as it goes around this corner. Trying to keep my hand out of the way here. And as you get towards these really teeny tiny ones that are going really far away, I'm not terribly concerned about them getting super close together. I'm really just looking to have a tiny little mark in through there. I might make a couple of these a little taller down in through here, just so I can have a little bit more perspective, so they do look like they're getting a little bit smaller. There we go. And then the teeny tiny ones up in the top, I'm staying on this side of the bridge for this minute. So again, just vertical, little tiny vertical marks. In a second, they're just going to end up looking like little tiny polka dots. But you know, you want to kind of stay true to what you're doing. So if you can get these little marks, great. If not, no worries. Right now I'm just going to kind of start doing little tiny polka dots, which will give the viewer the information that they're seeing the same thing, but because it's the same color pattern, but it's really far away, so I'm losing the detail of it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side in through here. So I've got this one somewhere in through here, just giving myself that vertical mark. This one's going to come somewhere in through here. And then again, as I get farther and farther away, I think these need to be a little bit wider in through here. As I get farther and farther away, what's going to happen is they're going to get smaller and smaller, so, and closer together. So we've got this one, and now I'm just going to kind of, oops, maybe those are not equally spaced. That's okay. We're all right with them not being perfectly equally spaced. And these ones I'm finding I'm doing a little bit taller on this right side than I did on this left side, but that's okay. We're going to disguise things with our clouds and all the other pretty things that are going to be going on this scenery. So again, just trying to keep them pretty vertical. I'm sure mine are not perfect. And again, not terribly concerned about that. And as I come over here, I just reloaded my brush, and now I'm just going to really start to make these itty bitty little marks. And again, just keeping them vertical. I can clearly see that mine are not equally spaced, especially towards the other side, you know, compared to the other side of the bridge. But when somebody's looking at this, I can almost guarantee that they're not going to say, oh my God, your things aren't perfectly balanced. And you know, if you want yours to be, you could certainly, again, pull out a ruler or do whatever else that you have. On this side, because it's on the other side of the bridge, these little posts are going to elevate themselves into the sky. So you'll be able to see them in front of the sky. And then once you've got this done, we're going to switch to our large brush for the next step. So you can put this small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna do the base coat for our clouds and our light. You could call it the sun if you'd like. You can call it the light. You can call it whatever you'd like. The bright spot, our light source. I'm gonna use my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm gonna use are the tan that we created. I will also be using brown, blue, white, and yellow. And what I'm gonna be doing is I'm going to be working from the dark to the light. So my light is here. That means that my dark is going to be the farthest away from that. So for me, it's going to be on the right hand side of my canvas and the bottom, because we're going to be adding clouds kind of drifting on the edges of the bridge to give it the illusion that it is lifted above this landscape. The biggest tip that I can give you on this step is less is more. The less paint that you have on your brush, the more control you will be able to keep. I'm doing clouds, so I want them to be light and airy, which means I don't want to have this heavy, globby paint on there that I'm going to just want to blend and make into one color. I want them to have this airiness to them. I'm going to be using a scrubbing or a scumbling type of technique, which means you don't have a lot of paint on your brush and you're kind of rubbing it into the canvas. I want to leave some peekaboo spots of my sky showing through, so I don't want to cover the whole thing, and I'm going to be starting my light source in through here. So my dark clouds are going to be with my tan, blue, and brown. Those are going to be around the edges, and as that's where I'm going to start, and then I'm going to work my way towards my light source, and I'm going to finish it with yellow and white where my light source is. All the while, just remember that this is the first coat, so it's not going to look awesome after this step, but it is definitely going to be a great base for us to work from. You also want to make sure that those posts that you put on your bridge are dry. I might have a little wet spot in through there. I think mine are mostly dry, but make sure that yours are dry so you're not running through wet black paint. I'm going to start with a small amount of my tan, a teeny tiny bit of brown, and a teeny tiny bit of blue. So you can even kind of test it out on here to see what you're getting. So I just want this kind of darker version of this, so with a little bit of blue in it. So that's kind of what's going to happen on my canvas when I start. I'm going to start over here on the right hand side. And again, I'm going to be using this scrubbing type of technique. I want mine to kind of look like they're floating away from my light source. So I'm just going to kind of put them in this formation. I am going to overlap my land a little bit, but because I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, this is allowing for me to see that landscape through there. And I'm going to reload my brush. I also, in a second, I like to almost run out of paint before I reload on a step like this, so that way, again, I never have too much paint on my brush. I am going to be overlapping it along this edge in through here as well. So I'm going to reload my brush with that color combination, tan, brown, and blue. And again, not a lot of the brown and the blue, or the tan for that matter. And I'm going to kind of bring myself, I think I need a little bit more brown and blue, make it just a touch more darker down in through here. I'm going to start down in through here. I'm going to move my canvas so I can reach the bottom in through here. As I'm doing this, again, I'm thinking that the clouds are just kind of coming behind and around these bases. I don't need to overpaint it. I can, what I mean by that is use too much paint. But you can paint over the base of these posts, so that's going to make it look like the clouds are just kind of drifting through. Reloading my brush with that same color combination, give myself some dark base to some clouds down in through here, and again, just want it to feel nice and airy, as if some of these clouds are behind these posts and just kind of working their way into the bridge platform. And again, just reloading my brush with those 3 colors to continue on this darker type of quest down in through here. And let's see here, still reloading with those 3 colors, brown, blue, and my tan. Oops, I just put a little bit too much blue on my brush. There we go. Got it back in control. And then because I want this to come in just a little bit more with these dark colors. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on my dirty brush, because I still have those darker colors. I'm going to start picking up just my tan, and what's going to happen is it's going to get lighter and lighter as I move towards here. So again, not a lot, just a little bit on my dirty brush, and I'm going to start moving in towards the left hand side. Again, leaving some peekaboo spots of my sky, putting a little bit towards this edge of my bridge so it looks like those clouds are just kind of rolling over it. And then I'm going to bring some up in through here. And again, because I'm using my dirty brush, it's releasing some of those tones in toward this lighter area. And that's how I'm going to get a nice gradient coming over towards this area. Starting to put my clouds rolling over into this area, over in through here, maybe a little bit over those edges of those. And then I'm still just picking up my tan right now, bringing it closer to what's going to be my light source. And in a minute, I'm going to start picking up my tan plus white. I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good in through there. Still just picking up my tan. I don't want to start picking up white too soon, so that's why I'm just cautiously proceeding in through here, thinking that that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to start picking up tan plus a little bit of white on my dirty brush. So this is going to give me a lighter version. That's too much paint, I can tell already. So I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel just to give myself more control. Again, I never want to be out of control. And if you're going about this and you're saying, well, I'm doing too much. I've covered up all these great areas that I wanted to have evident. When we do the second layer on the clouds, you'll be able to come back and kind of enhance some of those areas. Or if you thought that you wanted something darker or lighter, or you wanted to see more of the blue, you can certainly come back and incorporate those. So right now I'm just kind of using the remnants on my brush to kind of get these edges. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to not wash my brush, but I'm going to pick up white, a tiny bit of white, and a tiny bit of yellow. So just an itty bitty dot on my brush. I don't need a lot. This is going to be the start of my light source. So I'm going to start in through here, and I'm going to just kind of use it in a circular motion. And then I'm going to start pulling it out. I'm out of paint, so I need to reload with white and a teeny tiny touch of yellow. I put too much yellow on my brush, so I'm just picking up white with a teeny tiny touch of yellow. And making sure that I have, this is going to be kind of the glow underneath your light source. Picking up just a little bit more white. And so by providing this darker tone or this yellowy golden tone underneath it, it's going to allow for a really bright light. I put it on in through here, and then I'm just kind of pulling out almost these rays of light. So this is just yellow with a tiny touch of yellow, and white with a tiny touch of yellow, and very, very little bit of paint on my brush. I'm just kind of pulling it out from the center of my light source in through here. And then once you've got this done, again, don't worry about it being perfect at this point, because we've got a lot to go. Even if, it's not looking at all what you had anticipated, bear with us. We're going to make it look better as we go through the process. We're going to be using our, we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this in this stage, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to finish my bridge. So this is going to be, I'm going to finish the posts, and I'm also going to put a little rope connecting the posts. I'm going to be using my small brush. The dominant colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, and white, and I think that's it. I don't think I'm going to need any other colors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first add a highlight onto my posts that matter. They're not, I don't need to add highlight to all of them because I know I'm going to have clouds floating by up and through here, up through the top. So I don't need a lot of detail up top, but I definitely want to add some stuff, some highlights to these posts in through here. And then we'll be doing a connector kind of rope on them. Highlights on the posts and rope. So I'm going to start with brown and white on my brush. So mostly brown with just a little bit of white. I'll do my highlights on my left posts first. That's my light source up and through there. So I know that I want a highlight on the top of my posts, something like that. And then I can put a highlight, I would say for this one, it'd be down this right-hand side of my post. I don't need to do a whole heck of a lot. I want this to look kind of like wood. So for me, when I'm doing wood type of textures and stuff, I know that I can get away with them being a little bit on the rougher side and not terribly perfect. I can get them to look a little rustic in nature, so that works for me. I'm just kind of keep going back and forth between my brown and my white to give myself a little bit of highlight on this right-hand side with my white, and maybe get it to go a little bit more brown as it comes around the corner. So again, I'm going to approach that on each one the same way. So a little bit of brown and white on this tippy top. Oh, that one grew a little. I can kind of hit all of them at the same time. The ones that are popping out, that maybe this one I can get the top to pop out of that cloud a little bit, you know, and if you can hit, if you feel that it would make sense to put little bright spots on those, go for it. And then as I come around here, where's my light? It's kind of on both sides of this one, so I can kind of put a little highlight on both sides if I want. Again, just brown and white on my brush, brown and white, and then maybe as it comes back towards this back side, just pick up a little bit more brown. And the light, the highlight on the post will be on the side that is facing the sun. So on this one, I kind of had a little bit on both sides because it's kind of directly below that the light source. I'm picking up black paint right now because I have a little unpainted spot right here that I just wanted to kind of take care of. So there we go. So on this one, my highlight is going to be kind of on the left-hand side of it because the left-hand side is facing the light. So again, brown and white on my brush, maybe a little bit more white when you want it a little bit brighter. So just kind of going back and forth between my brown and my white, and then as I get to these smaller ones, I could probably just kind of sneak a little bright spot down there. Those little ones, again, don't really matter because you can't really see them. So pay attention to the ones you can see, but the ones you can't see, don't really worry too much about them. So brown and white are going back on my brush. I'm heading over to the other side of the canvas. Brown and white, these ones are all going to be on the left side because my light source is on the left side of them. So highlight on the top of my post. I can hit all of these at the same time. Just a little brown and white on my brush. And I like to, when I'm doing stuff like this, using two colors on my brush at the same time, it provides me with more of kind of a organic type of look to it, where it doesn't look like a manufacturer came in and put a nice clean line. It allows you to get kind of natural tones in it that are that you can't really control yourself with your brush. If you're using two colors on your brush at the same time, it allows for a multi-toned look without it looking like when you put one color straight and then the next color right next to it. This provides you with a little bit more natural of a look. So I just picked up a little bit more brown in order to get that to look a little bit more brown. But you could use a little bit of burnt sienna if you want this to look more of a new piece of wood, but I like kind of sometimes just making them look on the grayer side with this soft brown and black and white in order to make them look like they've got a little bit of age to them. I just keep elevating my highlight to make it look like they stand out. If you're having difficulty seeing them, if they're too similar in tone to the stuff behind them, you just need to add a little bit more contrast to them, which means make them lighter or darker. So that's why I keep kind of adding a little bit more brightness to them, so they're not the same tonal value as the stuff behind them. and that'll allow you to see them a bit more. So now that I've got that on there, I don't, again, need to do much on these little guys. I'm going to start adding my ropes. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start with just black paint on my brush, and I'm going to give myself just these kind of curved connector pieces from one post to the other. You can do them around it. You can do them just in a, I'm just going to kind of do mine in a curved way like this, and I'm going to have these ones that are closer to the viewer a little bit thicker. So I'm just kind of doing a curved line like that, and then I wrap it around the post itself as if it's tied around the post. So this is just a curved kind of line. I'll add a highlight to it in a minute, but right now just kind of giving myself the little the rope part itself, and then I would just do the same exercise from one to the next. Again, when you're going farther and farther away, you're hardly going to see them, and some of them are, you know, hiding in the clouds. So just use your best judgment. I mean, you don't need to overdo it. Do whatever makes sense to you. I'm going to tackle the little ones up top in a minute, but right now I'm going to get these bigger ones. And I'm not closing this off by putting them out of the screen. You could take the rope from here and do another curved line off your screen, but I kind of want it to almost look like this is the beginning of this bridge. So I didn't put more. I suppose you could if you wanted to. So I'm going to take this from here to here and then give myself a little curve to that one and make it a little bit thicker so it looks like it's closer to the viewer. So I just added a second kind of width to it. Give myself the curved line. Curving it is going to make it look like your post is round. If you just give it kind of a straight line, it'll look like your post is square. So you can adapt whatever type of way you want your post to look by giving the viewer the information of the shape of it or the form by the way that the rope kind of wraps around it. So before I go too far up there, because I know once I go up there, I'm just going to kind of cruise along because they're going to be so tiny. So once I've got this in through here, I'm going to, I'll do my little ones in a second. They're just going to get black, but I want to add a little bit of highlight to these guys before I go and cruise along those smaller ones. So I'm just going to put a little bit of brown and white on my brush at the same time and just give myself a quick little highlight on these ropes towards the top side. So what that means is I'm leaving a little bit of the black showing. This is just something that's going to give me a little bit more of a 3D look to that little piece of rope. Again, hardly doing anything, just giving the illusion that there is a little bit of a texture or a thickness or something to that rope, so it's not just flat black. And I just kind of scoop my brush along. I am running through wet black paint right now, which again just makes it look a little bit more natural. And then I'm gonna just use black for my tiny ropes as I go up above, because again, I know that they're going to be hidden in the clouds. So I'm just using a little bit of black paint and a tiny bit of water on my brush too, so that way I can get these little skinny lines. And you can tackle it whatever way that you want. I'm just going to kind of scoot like this and just give myself a whole bunch of curved lines. Actually, I think I'm going to start at the top and work my way down, because I feel like that's the way my vision will work. And again, these tiny ones up at the top, I personally can hardly see them. I feel like my head is being pushed back a little bit so my vision can actually see them, but you might, again, just skip them if you don't feel that you can even, that the viewer would even discern what it is, you know. So sometimes it doesn't make sense if you don't think that the viewer would even be able to see them that far away, then maybe you just skip that altogether. But I feel like it helps for me to, with the color story and with being able to see the sides of the bridge a little bit more. So that's why I've opted to include it on mine. But again, if you don't want it on yours, that's totally fine. And this side over here, I don't even know if I can get to these guys. Maybe just a tiny little bit in between some of these. And then we're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our clouds and our light source. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are tan and white, definitely. And that's going to be for my highlights on my clouds and my light source. I might use a little bit of yellow, and I will definitely also use a little bit of brown and blue as well. I'm hesitant to say all these colors that I'm using because you may choose not to. What I'm really looking to do here is add highlights to my clouds and to brighten my light source. In doing so, you might find that you don't want to tap back into the brown and the blue to maybe enhance some of these darker clouds. Maybe you just go with the tan and the white to finish this step. So as I'm going through mine, if I'm bringing some of my clouds a little bit darker than you would want yours, you can certainly keep yours nice and light and airy. I'm going to be adding highlights to the sides of the clouds that are facing my light source. So let's take this cloud formation in through here. I would add my highlight to the left side of those clouds to tell the viewer that the light source is illuminating them. On my drifty clouds in through here, I'll be adding just a little bit of light fluff on the top of them in order to show that they're being illuminated. Again, never have a lot of paint on my brush. I will be working from dark to light. So what I'm going to start with is a tiny bit of my tan and also a teeny bit of brown and blue. So itty bitty bit of brown and blue, but mostly tan. And this is going to be, I'm starting my darker, the highlights to my darker stuff. So that's why I'm using more tan, but I am using a little bit of those other colors as well. So I'm going to start on the top side of these clouds. You can, and you don't just have to go like just at the edge, like you saw that I just kind of pulled this up a little bit in through here. I want it to look light and airy and fluffy, so I don't need to just do on the edge of each one of these. I can certainly bring a little highlight in through here. I'm going to be adding another kind of layer of lightness on top of this in a second. This just kind of gets me that gets me started with a little bit of the texture to the clouds. So I just reloaded my brush with that same, well, I need a little bit more paint than that if we want to actually see it, with the same color combination. So my tan plus a little bit of a tiny bit of the blue and the brown. You can even bring out, like I felt like there was a little unpainted area in through there. You can bring these out a little bit more. Just, you know, do whatever is visually appealing to you to get the, there was a little bit of yellow on my brush there, to get these clouds to be as airy and fluffy as you want them to be. So again, just my tan, tiny bit of the blue and the brown to just work these little bits of highlights into these clouds. These clouds in through here, they can lay in front. Again, I'm going to keep saying, I just keep picking up yellow. Hold on a second. I don't want yellow right now. There must be yellow near my tan somewhere. You can put the cloud in front of the post. Again, I'm intending it to look, spinning my palette so I don't do that again. I'm intending for it to look like the clouds are just kind of rolling in between these posts. So feel free to incorporate, you know, some coming, maybe even you have one kind of rolling into the middle of your bridge. Feel free to just enjoy that process and let your clouds float wherever you want them to float. So right now I'm just picking up my tan. I didn't reload with any of the blue and the brown, so that now you can start to see these lighter versions happening on top. I just always like to proceed with caution when it comes to clouds, just because I know that they can really get away from you quickly and kind of be overpainted really easy. I still want to see some of these peekaboo spots of the sky, so Right now I'm just picking up my tan, and I can see that it's still lighter than the first layer that I put on. So that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to put little highlights on here. Gonna bring some of this in through here and make sure that this all looks like it works well together. I'm hardly doing anything right now, just kind of getting that lightness to appear closer to my light source. There we go, bringing these in through here, making sure that it incorporates. I know I need a little bit more highlight on these guys here, so picking up just a little bit more of the tan and getting little bits around these guys. Gonna kind of bring this up in through here as if it's just kind of drifting in front. Maybe we got little bits coming out in through here, little bits over here, a little bit here, a little bit there, just wherever your eye is taking you to make this as airy as you want. Now, as I'm working my way towards the sun, I know I did this with tan, so I need to go tan plus a tiny bit of white. So again, just an itty bitty bit on your brush. You don't need much to see the difference, to see the lightness start to appear. And again, just kind of pushing it and using it more on the side of those clouds that's closer to the light source. And again, hardly any paint on my brush right now, just getting my little bits of airiness in through here. In a second, I'm gonna add some light to my light source, and then we'll come back and pop some brightness of white on top of these clouds. So there is one more layer that I'm going to put on the clouds in a second. I just wanted to add this this first layer of making my way towards the light right now, and then after I do a little bit of work on my light source, I will come back and make these even brighter. So that's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do, I am going to wash my brush. I'm going to work on this light source for a minute, and then we're going to finish up the clouds and finish off our light source. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to put white paint, but a little bit. I don't need a lot, just a little bit of white paint on my brush. I'm going to start in the center of my light source and just get it to go nice and light. I don't need to cover up all of my yellow. I can certainly allow it to still show through, and I'm going to just follow those beams of light that I put on originally. You can still see some of that yellow aside from them. So this is, again, just kind of working my way towards the brightness, which is going to be very, very bright in the center. I can even overlap this a little bit into, like we did before, overlap it into the clouds a little bit. So this is, again, not my end-all be-all yet. I'm still working my way towards that brightest of the bright, but because I'm doing it in a progressive way, it's giving it this beautiful airiness to it. So again, just this, I've got my white, I'm just kind of pulling it into all of my clouds. So this will also allow this little bit of light to be popping through some of these clouds as they are going through the sky. So you can pull these out, pull it between those clouds, and in a second when I add that second layer onto the clouds, you're going to see these little pops of beams in between, which is a really cool effect. So that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up tan plus white. This is going to be my final bright layer of my clouds. So this is tan plus white, and this is where I start to really get these bright edges on my clouds. So every time I go into a lighter color mixture for my clouds, I'm taking up less real estate in that cloud. So I'm putting it in a smaller area. So this is tan plus white and hardly any on my brush. So as I'm tapping it and rubbing it into the tips of these clouds, I'm leaving some of those darkness areas from behind, so it looks like it's lighter on this left-hand side and kind of billows or fades into the darker right-hand side of it. And I'm watching my color pattern to just kind of allow myself to put these little light bits here and there. So again, tan plus a touch of white on my brush, working my way towards, and that's too much paint on my brush, always err on the side of caution, and just kind of allowing for these bright little tips to happen. And I'm going to start using white as I get close just white in a second, but I'm still kind of in tan plus white at this point because I know that these are going to be a little darker back here than they are right at the light source. So again, I'm working my way without going too much into white. I always like to reserve my white for nearly last. That's, you know, my brightest of my bright, and I can't go any brighter than white. So I have to be mindful to not break it out too early, to always just be cautious and using it when I can, when I'm ready to, when I can't go any whiter, or when there's no room to go any whiter. So right now I'm still in my tan plus white on my brush because I want these clouds on here to be darker than the ones that are going to be the closest to the light source. So even though these are turning out pretty light right now, they will in fact look like they're farther away, because when I go to do the ones by the right next to the light source, they are going to be the brightest with the most white on them. And then again, just kind of bringing in some little dabs here and there as I'm coming up here. I might start using just a little bit more white, but I need to get these guys first with my tan and white. And now I'm going to start picking up white paint. Again, not a lot, and it's on my dirty brush. So this is going to allow these edges to be the brightest. And I can even do them little smaller ones because they seem to be farther and farther away from the viewer. The viewer's here, so these could be big and fluffy, and as they're going farther and farther away, maybe these are just kind of little tiny marks going in that direction of the light source. And I know that once I get this done, I will most likely let it dry, because sometimes these will dry a little bit darker than you had anticipated, especially when you're building these layers on here. So I may end up coming back and doing a little bit more on top of it, but it's looking pretty good. I'm going to put some of my white over in through here, and again on the edges of the clouds that are the closest to my light source. And I'm going to amp up that center of the light source in a second with white paint as well, but right now just kind of getting these final little clouds in place with a little bit of extra white on the edges as they're looking. Those edges are looking right at that light source, tapping in some in through here. Yeah, this is looking pretty nice and soft up in through here. And now I'm going to start adding that white in the center. So I know I was kind of using a combination of my white and tan, even though as I was coming towards the light source, I was just picking up white. I may still have a little bit of that tan on my brush. So I am going to wash my brush before I hit my light source, just to be really certain that I'm just going to be using white. So I'm washing and drying my brush. Give it a good squeeze so it's pretty dry and not a lot of water in it. I'm picking up a teeny bit of white paint, dabbing it off on my paper towel. I'm going to start right back in that center, and you'll see how white it really can be as you build these colors. If you just started with white and started to do this this beam of light with just white, you wouldn't have that dimensional element. It might not look like it's glowing if you just started with white paint. So I like to build some, you know, these lights in a progressive way so they look as bright as I can get them to look. And then I'm just going to start pulling out these bright beams, and you can have the beams as bright as you want, as long as you want. They can be, you know, casting their beautiful light upon, you know, the whole thing, or just bits and pieces, whatever you want. It's your heavenly style painting. You make it into whatever is pleasing to your eye. And then fiddle with it all you want. We're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I think I'm going to go bottom left on this one with black paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very pretty, heavenly autumn painting, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.